The night was quiet, and the streets outside the airport were almost empty. A black luxury car stopped in front of a tall shining hotel. The woman who stepped out did not look like someone important at first glance. She wore a simple coat, her hair tied back neatly, and carried a small travel bag. She looked tired from a long flight, but her eyes still carried a calm strength. Few people would have guessed that she was the CEO of the very hotel she was about to enter. She had built this hotel chain from the ground up with years of hard work, endless meetings, and sleepless nights. Now she was finally here, hoping to check into one of her own hotels quietly, without fanfare or anyone knowing who she was. The lobby was bright with golden lights, and the sound of music played softly in the background. Guests were arriving, some laughing with their families, others walking with heavy suitcases. The front desk had two receptionists, both smiling warmly at certain people, while ignoring others. The CEO, dressed simply, walked up to the desk with her bag and gave a small tired smile. "Good evening," she said softly. "I would like a room for the night, please." The young woman at the desk looked at her for just a second, then looked away, her smile disappearing. She typed something on her computer and shook her head. "We're fully booked," she replied quickly, without even asking for the woman's name or checking properly. The CEO was surprised. She had not expected to be welcomed with open arms, but she did not expect to be dismissed so quickly either. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. "I don't mind any room, even a smaller one. I just need a place to rest." The receptionist sighed. "Like I said, ma'am, we are fully booked. Maybe you should try another hotel down the street." Before the CEO could reply, a well-dressed man in a suit walked in. He carried no luggage, only a small briefcase. He approached the same desk. The receptionist who had just denied her instantly stood taller, her face lighting up with a big smile. "Good evening, sir," she said cheerfully. "Do you need a room? We still have some business suites available." The CEO blinked, her heart sinking. Just moments ago, she had been told no rooms were available. Now, a man in a suit was being offered a business suite as if the hotel was empty. She looked around quietly. She noticed another guest, a young couple, also being checked in without any trouble. Her chest felt heavy. It was clear now that she had not been turned away because of a full hotel, it was because of how she looked. She stayed calm, not letting her feelings show. "I understand," she said softly. "Thank you for your time." She turned and walked to a sofa in the corner of the lobby. She sat down, placing her bag beside her, and watched. She wanted to see more, to know if this was just one mistake or something deeper. From her seat, she observed carefully. The receptionists gave warm smiles to guests who looked wealthy. They offered upgrades, free drinks, and friendly conversation. But when a delivery worker came in carrying heavy boxes, they frowned and pointed to a side door, saying, "Use the service entrance." The worker bowed his head and walked away silently. The CEO's chest tightened again. Memories of her childhood came rushing back. She had grown up in a small town where her family often faced rejection just because of their skin color and simple clothes. She remembered times when her mother was ignored in stores, or when her father was denied jobs despite being more qualified than others. Those painful moments had fueled her determination to succeed, to one day build something where people would be treated with fairness and respect. That was why she had built this hotel empire in the first place, to create spaces where everyone felt welcome. Yet here she was, in one of her own hotels, watching her vision crumble in front of her. As she sat quietly, an older janitor passed by with a mop and bucket. He noticed her sitting alone and gave her a small nod of respect. "You look tired, ma'am," he whispered kindly. "Don't take it too hard. You're not the first person they've treated like this." His words confirmed her thoughts. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. Something inside her shifted. She decided not to reveal her identity yet. Instead, she would let this play out. She would give the staff enough space to show their true colors. Hours passed, and she stayed in the lobby, pretending to be waiting for someone. She saw everything: how people in expensive clothes got special attention, how those who looked simple were brushed aside. She noticed which employees carried arrogance and which ones carried kindness. The janitor, for example, always greeted guests politely, no matter who they were. A young waitress in the lobby cafe smiled warmly at every customer, even the ones who ordered only a small cup of tea. These were the kinds of employees she valued, the ones who understood real hospitality. Finally, as the night grew late, she decided she had seen enough. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes for a moment. Tomorrow, everything would change. The receptionist who had denied her earlier glanced at her again, with a look that suggested she thought the woman didn't belong there at all. She whispered something to her coworker, and they both chuckled softly, thinking she couldn't hear. But she heard every word. And instead of feeling anger, she felt something else: a deep, steady determination. She knew tomorrow morning she would return, not as a tired traveler in simple clothes, but as the CEO and owner of the entire hotel chain. And when she did, those who had disrespected her would understand who she was. More importantly, they would learn the biggest lesson of their lives, that true respect has nothing to do with appearance, and everything to do with character. That night, she left quietly and stayed at a small guest house nearby, one where the staff welcomed her warmly without even knowing her identity. She slept peacefully, not because she had forgotten the insult, but because she knew the next day would bring justice. And she was ready. The morning sun lit up the city as the CEO woke up in the small guest house she had chosen for the night. The place was humble, with simple wooden furniture and the faint smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen. The staff had treated her with warmth the moment she entered the previous night, offering her tea and a smile, without asking about her clothes or judging her appearance. That little kindness had reminded her of the real meaning of hospitality, something that seemed to have been forgotten in her own hotel. As she sat by the window sipping a cup of coffee, she thought about the night before. Every moment replayed in her mind: the cold face of the receptionist, the fake smile given to the man in the suit, the soft whisper of the janitor who had spoken the truth. She felt a quiet fire inside her. She had worked for years to build her hotels into places where every guest would feel valued, yet some staff had turned it into a place of arrogance. She could not let it continue. Her assistant, who had arrived early that morning, joined her at the guest house. "Ma'am, I've already arranged your schedule for today," the assistant said, handing her a folder. "There's a board meeting at 10, and the managers from this property will also be present." The CEO smiled slightly. "Good. But before that, I want to walk into that lobby again. I want to see them with my own eyes, just the way I did last night, but this time I won't be silent." She changed into her business attire, a sharp navy suit, polished shoes, and a delicate necklace that gave her a commanding presence. She carried no travel bag this time, only a leather folder with documents. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she no longer looked like a tired traveler. She looked like the leader she truly was. Her assistant nodded, understanding her plan. Together, they drove back to the hotel. The lobby looked the same as before: bright chandeliers, polished marble floors, and the sound of rolling suitcases. But there was a different energy when she walked in this time. Guests turned their heads, noticing the confidence in her steps. Employees looked up from their counters, curious about the woman who carried herself like she owned the place, because, in truth, she did. The same receptionist from last night stood at the front desk. When she saw the CEO, she straightened her posture and smiled, not recognizing her yet. "Good morning, ma'am," she said politely. "How can I help you today?" The CEO paused, her calm eyes studying the young woman. For a moment, She did not reveal anything. "I'd like to speak with your manager," she said. The receptionist quickly called the duty manager, a man in a gray suit who walked over with a confident air. "Good morning," he greeted. "Welcome to our hotel. Is there something I can assist you with?" The CEO nodded slowly. "Yes. I stayed in your lobby last night. I was told there were no rooms available. But I watched as several other people were checked in after me. Do you know why that happened?" The manager looked slightly uneasy, but he covered it with a practiced smile. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding, ma'am. Perhaps our staff were confused, or perhaps those guests had reservations." She cut him off gently but firmly. "No, I was there long enough to know the truth. I didn't just see it happen once. I saw it happen many times. Your staff judged people by appearance. And last night, I was one of them." The receptionist's face paled. She was beginning to recognize her now, realizing that this was not just any guest. A murmur went around the lobby as a few employees and guests noticed the tension. The janitor, the same kind man from last night, came out from the hallway carrying his mop. When he saw her again, his eyes widened in surprise. He gave her a small respectful nod, just like before. She returned the nod warmly. By now, the manager's smile had vanished. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "may I know who you are?" The CEO straightened her shoulders, her voice steady. "You may. I am the CEO and owner of this hotel chain. Every corner of this building, every paycheck you receive, comes under my leadership. And last night, I was denied a room in my own hotel." Gasps filled the lobby. The receptionist's hands shook as she gripped the desk. The manager's face turned pale. Guests nearby whispered among themselves, some pulling out their phones to quietly record the scene. The CEO didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm tone carried more weight than any shout ever could. "I built this hotel chain so that people from all walks of life would feel welcome. I worked my entire life to make sure no guest would ever feel lesser than another. And yet, in my own hotel, I saw people judged, dismissed, and insulted because of their appearance. That is not who we are. That is not what I built." The janitor, emboldened by her words, stepped forward slowly. "She speaks the truth," he said softly. "I've seen it happen before. Some of us have tried to speak up, but no one listened. Guests who looked simple were pushed aside. I'm glad you saw it with your own eyes." The CEO turned to him, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said. "You are the kind of employee who makes a hotel strong, honest, kind, and brave." The staff looked down in shame. The receptionist, tears welling in her eyes, stammered, I didn't know. I thought." The CEO raised her hand gently. "You thought wrong. And this is not just about me. It's about every single guest who has ever walked through these doors. Respect is not a gift you give to those who look wealthy. Respect is the foundation of hospitality. Without it, this hotel is nothing but empty walls." Her assistant handed her the folder, and she placed it firmly on the front desk. "We are having an emergency staff meeting in 1 hour. Every employee in this building must attend. Changes will be made today. Those who cannot uphold our values will not remain in this company." The lobby was silent. No one dared to move. Guests watched with admiration, some even clapping quietly. The janitor smiled, his shoulders relaxing as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. The CEO turned and began walking toward the conference hall, her assistant and a few board members following close behind. Every step echoed with authority. The staff who had looked down on her the night before now looked at her with wide eyes, realizing they had made the mistake of their lives. And in that moment, the hotel no longer belonged to arrogance and fake smiles. It belonged to her again, the woman who had built it, the woman who had protected its values, and the woman who would not allow anyone to destroy what she had created. The conference hall was large, with long tables, glass walls, and a polished floor that reflected the bright ceiling lights. By the time the CEO entered, the room was already filled with employees, from front desk staff to housekeeping, waiters, security, and managers. Some looked nervous, whispering to each other. Others sat stiffly in their chairs, unsure of what was about to happen. The janitor stood near the back, his mop leaned against the wall, watching quietly with respectful eyes. The CEO walked in calmly, her assistant and board members at her side. She did not carry anger on her face, instead, she carried something stronger: confidence and truth. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to her, realizing this was no ordinary meeting. She walked to the front of the room, set down her folder, and looked at every single person. For a moment, she said nothing. That silence made everyone feel the weight of the moment even more. Finally, she spoke in a clear, steady voice. "Last night, I came to this hotel after a long flight. I did not tell anyone who I was. I walked in as a normal guest. I asked for a room, and I was told there were no rooms available. A few minutes later, I watched other guests who looked wealthier than me being offered rooms and even upgrades. What does that say about how we treat people in this hotel?" The staff shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some lowered their eyes. The receptionist who had turned her away the night before sat frozen, her face pale. "This hotel," the CEO continued, "was not built on marble floors or golden chandeliers. It was built on the simple idea of respect. Respect for every guest, no matter who they are or how they look. Respect for every employee, no matter their position. Without respect, this hotel is just another building. And last night, I saw respect missing from this place." She paused to let her words sink in. The janitor raised his head slightly, his eyes filled with quiet hope. He had worked in this hotel long enough to know when something was wrong, but no one had ever listened before. The CEO turned to the receptionist. "Stand up," she said gently but firmly. The young woman stood, trembling slightly. "Tell everyone here what happened when I asked for a room," the CEO said. The receptionist's voice shook. I told you we were full. I didn't check properly. I assumed," her words trailed off as tears filled her eyes. "You assumed I wasn't the kind of guest this hotel should welcome," the CEO finished her sentence softly. "And that assumption was wrong. It was not just wrong with me. It is wrong with anyone. We do not turn people away because of assumptions. We do not measure respect based on clothes, skin color, or wealth." The receptionist wiped her tears, whispering, "I'm sorry." The CEO nodded. "Apologies are only the beginning. Change is what matters." She turned to the entire room. "Now, I want to hear from all of you. Has this happened before? Have guests been treated differently based on how they look?" At first, the room was silent. No one wanted to speak. Then, slowly, the janitor raised his hand. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I've seen it. Many times. Some guests are treated like they're kings. Others are treated like they don't belong. I tried to tell managers before, but they ignored me. Last night, when I saw you being denied, I knew you would understand." The CEO nodded again. "Thank you for your honesty. This is what bravery looks like, telling the truth even when it's not easy." She turned back to the group. "Anyone else?" A young waitress from the lobby cafe spoke up. "I've seen it too. Sometimes guests who only order a tea or coffee are treated as if they are not important. But I believe every guest should be treated the same." Another employee, from housekeeping, raised her hand timidly. "Sometimes we hear jokes in the staff room. Jokes about guests who look simple. I never liked it, but I was afraid to say anything." The CEO listened carefully to each one, her expression serious but calm. "Thank you," she said. This is the truth I needed to hear. It shows me the problem is not just one person. It is a culture that has been allowed to grow. And today, that culture ends. The managers at the table shifted uncomfortably. One of them cleared his throat and tried to speak. Ma'am, with respect, these are small mistakes. Every hotel has them. Our staff is under pressure, and sometimes they slip. It doesn't mean the whole system is broken. The CEO's eyes sharpened. No. You are wrong. These are not small mistakes. When a guest feels unwanted, when an employee feels unseen, the heart of this hotel breaks. We cannot sell luxury on the surface while disrespect hides underneath. I built this hotel chain to be different. If you think this is small, then you do not belong in leadership here. The manager's face turned red. He lowered his eyes, realizing his mistake. The CEO stood taller. Here is what will happen. From today, every employee will undergo training on respect and fairness. We will create a new system to make sure no guest is ever judged by appearance again. Any employee who fails to follow this will no longer work here. Because if we cannot protect the dignity of our guests, then we have no right to serve them. The room was quiet, but her words burned into everyone's minds. She turned to the janitor again. You were the only one brave enough to speak when others stayed silent. For that, you will no longer be carrying a mop. From today, you are promoted to lobby supervisor. Your job will be to ensure that kindness and respect are the first things guests see when they enter. The janitor's eyes widened. He had worked silently for years, never expecting recognition. Now, tears filled his eyes as he nodded, too moved to speak. The staff clapped softly, admiration spreading through the room. The CEO finished with steady words. This hotel is more than walls and furniture. It is people. People who come tired, people who come hopeful, people who need kindness. We will give them that, or we will give them nothing at all. That is my promise as your leader. As the meeting ended, employees walked out quietly, many deep in thought. The receptionist sat down with her face in her hands, realizing how much her small decision had hurt the heart of the hotel. The managers whispered nervously, knowing changes were coming that they could not stop. But for the janitor, for the waitress, and for the housekeeping staff who had always felt invisible, hope grew stronger. They knew things would be different now. They had seen their leader stand up not just for herself, but for everyone. Outside the conference hall, guests were still checking in and out. Some had heard whispers of what had happened. Word was spreading fast. A guest whispered to another, "Did you know? That woman who was turned away last night, she's the CEO. And she's changing everything." The CEO walked through the lobby once more, her head high. The same chandelier lights shone above her, but they no longer felt empty. She knew the real light of a hotel was not glass or gold, it was respect. And now, that light would shine brighter than ever. The conference meeting had ended, but the story inside the hotel was only beginning to unfold. After giving her powerful words to the staff, the CEO walked slowly back toward the lobby. Her assistant walked beside her, carrying a notepad filled with the new policies they had discussed. The board members whispered to one another, clearly impressed by her calm leadership and steady vision. The lobby was now buzzing with quiet tension. Guests had heard pieces of what happened, and some were whispering with excitement. Employees stood straighter, their faces serious, waiting to see what would happen next. The receptionist from the previous night looked pale, her eyes fixed on the floor, while the duty manager shifted uncomfortably near the desk, glancing at her nervously. The CEO stopped in the middle of the lobby. She turned slowly, looking around at everyone present. Her presence carried a weight that made even the most confident workers hold their breath. Then, in a clear voice, she called out, "Bring every department head to the lobby right now." The order was carried quickly. Within minutes, the heads of housekeeping, security, kitchen, cafe, and front desk all stood together. The staff lined the sides of the lobby, and even guests paused to watch. No one wanted to miss what was about to happen. The CEO's voice was calm but sharp. This hotel is not just a business. It is a promise to every guest who walks through these doors. That promise was broken. And when a promise is broken, trust is lost. Today, we are rebuilding that trust. She turned her eyes to the receptionist. Stand up. The young woman slowly stepped forward, her hands trembling. You denied me a room, the CEO said. Not because we were full, but because of what you assumed about me. Do you understand the seriousness of what you did? Tears streamed down the receptionist's cheeks. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. I made a terrible mistake. I judged when I should not have. I'm truly sorry. The CEO nodded slowly. Your mistake was not just with me. It was with every person who has faced the same disrespect in this place. This is not about apology, it is about change. You will step down from your current position. If you are willing to start again, you may work under training in a junior role, where you will learn the true meaning of hospitality. If not, you may leave today. The receptionist nodded quickly, tears falling harder. I'll learn, ma'am. I promise. The CEO's eyes softened slightly. Then prove it. Next, she turned to the duty manager. You were told before about these patterns. You ignored them. You defended what happened last night by calling it a small mistake. Tell me, how can a guest's dignity be a small matter? The manager's face turned red. I was wrong. I thought it was nothing serious. The CEO's expression stayed firm. Leadership is not about defending mistakes. It is about fixing them. From this moment, you are suspended. Whether you return depends on whether you can learn humility. This hotel has no space for arrogance. The entire room was silent. The staff exchanged glances, realizing the CEO was not only speaking but acting. This was not a speech for show. This was real change. Then the CEO called the janitor forward. The old man stepped nervously to the center, wiping his hands on his uniform. His face showed surprise when she motioned for him to stand beside her. This man, she said loudly, so everyone could hear, was the only one who spoke the truth when others stayed silent. He saw wrong, and he did not hide it. That is the kind of courage that keeps a company alive. From today, he is no longer janitor. He will serve as lobby supervisor. His job is to ensure respect is the first thing our guests feel when they walk in. The janitor's eyes widened. For years, he had mopped floors, unseen and unheard. Now, tears filled his eyes as the staff clapped loudly. Even guests watching from the lobby joined the applause. The CEO placed a hand gently on his shoulder, smiling. This is the kind of employee we celebrate, she said. She then looked at the entire staff. From today, every single one of you will go through training to remind you of what this hotel stands for. The training is not about how to check people in or how to carry luggage. It is about respect. It is about kindness. It is about fairness. If you cannot live by those values, then you cannot be part of this team. The staff stood straighter, some nodding with determination. They knew this was serious, and many of them felt a spark of pride they finally had a leader who saw them and stood for what was right. After the announcements, the CEO invited some guests to speak. If anyone has ever felt unwelcome here, please tell us, she said. One elderly guest raised his hand. I came here last year. I was dressed simply because I travel light. I was treated poorly at the front desk. I left after one night. I thought this hotel wasn't for people like me. Today, I see that maybe it is. The CEO bowed her head respectfully. I'm sorry you felt that way. This hotel belongs to everyone. No guest should ever feel less important. Thank you for telling your story. Another guest, a woman with 2 children, stepped forward. I come here often, and sometimes I notice how the staff change their tone depending on who is standing in front of them. I always hoped someone would notice. Thank you for noticing. The CEO nodded again. Your words matter. This hotel is nothing without our guests. We will be better. That is my promise to you. The atmosphere in the lobby changed completely. What had been tense moments earlier now felt lighter, more hopeful. Guests who were watching smiled with admiration. Employees who had felt invisible now stood with pride. The CEO's words and actions had turned the entire place into a classroom of respect. By the time the day ended, several employees had been let go, others were reassigned, and new rules were written. The janitor turned supervisor walked around the lobby, his chest lifted proudly, already guiding the younger staff with gentle words. The receptionist, though humbled, approached him quietly. Can you help me learn? She asked softly. He nodded with kindness. Yes. We'll all learn together. The CEO watched this from a distance, her heart full. She had not wanted revenge. She had wanted justice. And what she saw now was not just change in the hotel, it was change in people. She smiled quietly, knowing the journey was not over, but the first step had been taken. That evening, she sat in her office at the hotel, overlooking the city lights. Her assistant placed a cup of tea in front of her. Ma'am, the entire company is already talking about what happened here today, the assistant said. News is spreading fast. Guests are praising you, and staff are inspired. What you did today will change more than just this one hotel. The CEO took a sip of her tea, gazing out at the city. That's the point, she said softly. It's never about one hotel. It's about people. If we can change one heart, we can change many. And if we can change how we treat people here, we can change how people are treated everywhere. Her assistant smiled. You've made them regret their choices instantly, but more than that, you've made them want to do better. The CEO nodded slowly, her eyes filled with quiet strength. That's the only kind of regret I want to leave behind, the kind that leads to growth. The next morning, the hotel felt like a different place. The lobby, which had once carried an air of coldness and quiet judgment, now seemed warmer. Employees stood straighter, their faces more open, as if they had been given a second chance to prove themselves. Guests moved about with brighter smiles, sensing the change in atmosphere. Even the chandeliers above seemed to shine differently, as though they too were part of the new beginning. The CEO entered the lobby early, before the rush of check-ins and check-outs began. She wanted to see for herself how the staff were carrying themselves after the events of the day before. The new lobby supervisor, the former janitor, was already there. He wore a fresh uniform and carried himself with pride, greeting every guest who walked in with a warm smile. His kindness set the tone for everyone else. Good morning, ma'am, he said respectfully as she entered. I've already spoken to the reception team. We're practicing the new system you asked for. The CEO returned his smile. And how do you feel in your new role? He looked down for a moment, as if trying to find the right words. Grateful, he said finally. For years, I thought my work didn't matter. Yesterday, you showed me it does. Now I want to make sure no guest ever feels invisible. Her heart swelled with quiet pride. This was exactly the kind of change she had wanted, not just rules on paper, but true transformation in people's hearts. As the morning went on, she sat in a corner of the lobby, watching. She saw the receptionist, the same young woman who had denied her a room, now standing with more humility. Her voice was softer, her smile more genuine. She treated an elderly couple with deep respect, helping them with their luggage and even offering them tea while they waited for their room. The CEO noticed the change. It was small, but it was real. The staff were no longer working out of fear of punishment. They were working with awareness, knowing that their actions mattered. And the guests noticed too. A family checking in commented, "Everyone is so kind today. It feels different here." The CEO didn't need to say a word. She simply observed, letting the new culture take root naturally. Later in the day, she held a smaller meeting with the department heads. She sat at the head of the table, her voice steady but filled with warmth. What happened yesterday was painful, but it was also necessary. It showed us where we had gone wrong. Now, it is our job to make sure this never happens again. This hotel must become the place I always dreamed of, where every person, no matter who they are, feels respected. The department heads nodded. Some of them had been defensive at first, but now they looked thoughtful, even inspired. One of them said, "Ma'am, I admit I had grown comfortable. I thought our success meant we were doing everything right. But I see now that success is not about money or stars on the wall. It is about people. Thank you for reminding us." The CEO gave a small smile. "Remember this always. A guest may forget the food they ate or the bed they slept in, but they will never forget how they were treated. That is what lasts." Her words stayed with them long after the meeting ended. That evening, as the sun set and golden light poured into the lobby through the tall glass windows, the CEO prepared to leave the hotel. She had other properties to visit, other responsibilities to handle. But she knew this visit would remain in the hearts of everyone here for a long time. Before leaving, she took one last walk through the lobby. The janitor-turned-supervisor stood proudly by the entrance, greeting new arrivals. The receptionist, though still nervous, smiled genuinely at each guest. The waitress in the cafe served tea with kindness, her laughter filling the air. Guests looked comfortable, relaxed, and truly welcomed. The CEO stopped near the entrance and turned around one last time. The staff had gathered, as if they knew she was about to leave. She addressed them in her gentle but commanding voice. "I came here first as a guest and was denied a room. That moment could have left me bitter. But instead, it reminded me why I built these hotels in the first place. To show the world that respect belongs to everyone. Yesterday, I made decisions that were difficult. But today, I see hope. I see change. And I believe this hotel will now stand taller, not because of its walls, but because of its people." The staff clapped softly, some with tears in their eyes. Guests joined in, moved by her words. She nodded once more, her eyes scanning the room. "Remember this always, a uniform does not make you important, and clothes do not make a guest worthy. It is kindness, respect, and humility that make us who we are. Let this hotel be a place where every person feels at home." With that, she turned and walked out, the sound of her footsteps echoing across the marble floor. Her assistant opened the car door for her, and she stepped inside. As the car pulled away, she looked back through the window. She saw the staff standing together, their faces filled with determination. She saw the janitor giving a kind nod to a guest, the receptionist offering a warm smile, and the cafe waitress laughing softly as she served. Her heart felt full. She knew she had planted seeds that would grow long after she was gone. In the days that followed, news of what had happened spread quickly. Articles appeared in newspapers about the CEO who had been denied a room in her own hotel and how she had turned the incident into a lesson in respect. Social media buzzed with admiration. Guests praised her courage and fairness. People across the world saw her not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a true leader. Other hotel branches took note. Managers and staff everywhere began to change the way they looked at guests. Training programs were updated, policies were rewritten, and values were reinforced. What began as a painful moment in one hotel turned into a movement across the entire chain. The CEO did not boast about it. She did not seek attention. For her, it was never about making headlines. It was about living up to her values. She simply continued her work, visiting hotels, meeting staff, and reminding them of the same truth: respect first, everything else second. Months later, when she returned to that same hotel, the difference was clear. Guests greeted her with smiles, staff carried themselves with warmth, and the lobby radiated the welcoming energy she had always dreamed of. The receptionist who had once denied her now worked with genuine kindness, having learned her lesson well. The janitor, now supervisor, guided the younger employees with wisdom and patience. As she stood in the middle of the lobby, watching the harmony around her, she felt a deep sense of peace. The incident that once stung had become the turning point that lifted the hotel to a higher standard. She had not only made them regret their actions instantly, she had helped them transform. For her, that was the real victory. Not punishment, but growth. Not revenge, but change. And so, the story of the CEO who was denied a room in her own hotel became more than just a story. It became a lesson, a reminder that leadership is not about titles or wealth, but about standing for what is right, even when it is hard. It became proof that respect, once planted, can grow into something powerful enough to change an entire company, and perhaps even the world.